Morning, everybody. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And Zora, thank you for inviting us. My name is Roy Prasad. I work with a company called BBSI. I'm the HR consultant there. BBSI, for those of you who don't know, is what's called a PEO, Professional Employer Organization. And what we do is we provide payroll, human resources, workers' compensation, safety, and business strategy services for small to mid-sized companies who don't necessarily need a full-time payroll person, a full-time HR person, a full-time risk person, or a full-time business strategist. Or perhaps they're so small that they can't afford to hire those people. So we come and provide these services at a fraction of what you'd pay for a normal, like one payroll person. You'd pay a fraction of what that person's salary is, and instead you get payroll, human resources, workers' compensation, and business strategy. On the payroll end, we do things like payroll processing. We'll do your payroll taxes, unemployment, garnishments, things like that. On the HR end, I'll take care of your policies, procedures, handbooks, employee relations stuff. If you have legal compliance issues, I'll bring those for you to your attention as well. We'll do leadership training seminars for you. All of those at no additional cost of what you normally pay. On the workers' compensation risk safety end, we provide things like a safety plan, safety audits. If there's workers' compensation claims or injuries, then we'll process those and take care of those for you as well. And then on the business strategy end, which is, I think, the most exciting things, we kind of look at your business and meet with you once a month or once a quarter, whatever works best for you. And then we strategize where you are now and where you want to be. So let's say you're a $500,000 company, you want to get to $5 million. We're the people that can help you kind of track out the milestones and how you can get to where you want to be. So if you're interested in any of our services, please talk to Tad afterwards. It's a great deal, I think anyway. So I've been with BBSI for about 2.5 years. Before then, I served in a variety of HR executive roles for companies here in the Valley and outside, actually. I was the Vice President of Human Resources for a company that had about 3,000 employees, mostly here in Utah. I was the VP of HR for another company that had about 10,000 employees. They had locations all over the United States, about 118 different locations. My longest tenure was with a company that had about 20,000 employees. I was their Vice President of Human Resources. We had 20,000 employees, 5 different countries. I had 5 HR officers that reported to me, so it was really kind of a fun gig. But after a while, you realize that HR is kind of a thankless job, and after you get kind of beaten up a little bit, you realize, I don't want to do HR anymore, and that's how I ended up at BBSI, where we get to work with small companies who are very noble in their aspirations of just wanting to earn a living, and hopefully leave something for their families when they retire, and that's it. So it's such a pleasure to be working with smaller companies now. On a personal front, I was born and raised in Nottingham, England. Any Brits in the house? No? Okay. Honorary. One honorary Brit in the back. But my parents are from the Fiji Islands, hence the dark color. So any Fijians in the house? No? Okay. That's all right. I've been married for 28 years. Thank you. I think that deserves an applause. 28 years. 3 different women. I'm kidding. Only one woman, but she spends as much as 3, so it's kind of the same thing. We have 3 children. My kids are 17, 19, and 19. People ask if my 2 oldest boys are twins. They are not twins. They're actually about 10 weeks apart. My wife and I adopted our 3 children from an orphanage in Taiwan, which is kind of fun because I'm dark, my wife is white, our kids are Chinese. It's like the Olympics at our house, but we love it and we're so incredibly grateful. So yes. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about Management Principles 101, Building a Connection. And throughout this presentation, guys, I'm going to tell you that we're going to be looking at real life scenarios that if you haven't already encountered them in your workplace, I guarantee that you will. So we're going to be talking about these things. What I'd like to do is kind of give you some direction on how to handle these issues if and when they come up in your workplace. So these are going to be real life stuff. Just know too, though, that I'd love to get your input and your stories and your comments, any questions that you might have. So feel free to speak up or share whatever you'd like to share with us too. Also, if you do participate, if you choose to participate, I will give you this one-of-a-kind flashlight pen that I've heard if you put it on eBay, you can get $3 for this. So yes, if you participate, I'll give you the pen. It'll be a fun deal, $3 in your pocket. Anyway, let's get started. So before we do, though, I'd like you all to close your eyes. Don't go to sleep. That's for later. But close your eyes, please. And I want you to think of yourself in a conference room, a nice conference room. You're looking at an older gentleman, not me, I'm not that old. But you're looking at an older gentleman and a younger lady who's standing by him. Okay? Do you see yourself there in this conference room? Great. And now you are a 32-year-old woman named Judy. You can open your eyes. Judy, hi, thank you for meeting with us today. When we hired you 2 years ago, Judy, we realized that you had a ton of potential. And you've been working with Paul and Mark and Jake and Carol, where you've clearly distinguished yourself from these wonderful people. So Judy, today we would like to offer you the position of office manager. Congratulations. We'd like to pay you $60,000 a year. You'll be a salaried employee from now on. And Jake and Paul and Mark and Carol will now report to you, so they won't be your colleagues anymore. Good morning, hi.
Sorry, guys.
Hi, come on in. Do we have room?
Yes.
Great, thank you, Tad. So Judy, congratulations on your promotion. And these people are going to be reporting to you from now on. And I think that it would be good, Judy, if you added one more person to your team as well. So congratulations, go out there and kill it. So Judy just became a first-time manager. She's never been a manager before. She's now also going to be a salaried employee. So let's talk about that for a second. When it comes to salaried employees versus hourly employees, who dictates whether you can be salaried or hourly? Is that your boss? Is that you? Is that the company? Who tells you whether you can be salaried or hourly? Salaried or hourly? Who knows? Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know. Ashley, what do you think? Who can tell you whether you're salaried or hourly? Who dictates that? Yeah, good question. I mean, good answer. A lot of people think that. And the truth is, most people don't know that it's actually the government that kind of tells you whether or not you can be classified as a salaried or hourly employee. So as a manager, I cannot say, you know what, Ashley's working as a receptionist a ton of overtime. And you know what, that overtime pay is costing me a lot of money. So let's just make her salaried, and that way I don't have to pay overtime. I can't do that. That's illegal. The government says that you can't do that. So what the government does is they bring out these guidelines, and the guidelines say there are certain positions, certain people that can be salaried. And those are like salespeople, external salespeople, not like your call center salespeople. Computer specialty positions, and those are like your higher level web development kind of stuff, not your help desk support. Learned professionals like doctors, lawyers, and engineers, those people can be salaried, and you're okay. And people who manage departments or people, those people can be salaried people. So Judy is going to be managing an office. She's going to be managing about 4 people. So she's okay to be salaried. But what happens if I misclassify someone as salaried when they really should be hourly? The Department of Labor says, if I find out about that, Roy, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to not audit that person. I'm going to audit your whole company. And if we find out that they're misclassified or anybody's misclassified, I'm going to fine you a ton of money. And that's happened to me before in former companies. And you're probably saying, well, Roy, nobody's going to find out about my company because it's just a small company. How's the Department of Labor going to find out? What happens is people leave your company because they're disgruntled, they got fired. They're going to pick up the phone and call the Department of Labor, OSHA, whomever, and go, this is what this company is doing. And that's how these federal agencies find out, and that's when they're going to come over to your company. So please make sure that you're in compliance, that you classify your people correctly. Judy is also going to be salaried now, and that means, guys, that somewhere along the way, her management, hopefully this won't happen, but her management may take advantage of her being a salaried employee. Too often we encounter clients or companies who say, well, now that you're salaried, you can work 60, 70 hours a week. What you have to do as managers is make sure that you set your boundaries, because this should be your priority. And if it's not your priority, you've got to make it your priority. So please do that. Make sure you set the boundaries. I used to work for a company a long time ago. I reported to the CFO. I was the vice president of human resources, and he had an unwritten rule that nobody could leave the office before he did at the end of the day. So I sat with the accounting team then, and his accountants and his controllers and everybody else would stay in the office until he left, and then they could leave. So sometimes that was till 6, 7 o'clock at nighttime. They would be sitting there gambling on the internet, playing games because they couldn't go anywhere. Their work was done, but they couldn't leave because of him. And he didn't want anybody to leave. And if you did try and leave, then he would give you a big, like make fun of you and say rude comments and things like that. And so, so then I adopted these 3 kids, my lovely, amazing children. And then I said, you know what, at 5 o'clock, if my work's done, then I'm just going to leave. And I did. And he would say those things like, oh, look, here's Roy, 5 o'clock. He's the clock watcher. And it's like, you know what, I'm sorry, Brad, but I have 3 kids. I need to get home. So I set my boundaries, is what I'm trying to tell you. Make sure that you look out for yourself. Set your boundaries. And as owners of companies, please make sure that you don't abuse that salary thing and that you don't make your people work an unreasonable amount of hours per week. You know, usually when you're salaried, you work 45 hours, maybe 50 hours per week, but don't go longer than that, if you can. All right, make sure that this is your priority, right? So Judy's a manager now. It's a lonely job, guys. The friends that she used to have as a rank and file employee are no longer going to be her friends anymore. So those people, Jake, Paul, Carol, the people that she used to hang out with at lunch, she can't do that anymore. As a manager, you can't do that. You've got to cut that tie. And sometimes it's really difficult for employees to do. What you need to recognize too is as a manager, those employees that you used to hang out with before they're going to treat you differently. They're not going to want to hang out with you anymore because you're a manager now and you're the boss and you're kind of on the outsides. So you need to be prepared for that. I also encourage new managers and owners to not participate in social media with their employees. Just don't do it. It's not a good practice. Miss, what's your name?
Glenda.
Glenda, nice to meet you. I'm Roy. Why do you think managers and owners shouldn't participate with their employees over Facebook or anything else?
I think, well, personal opinion, I think, your private life is your private life. Once you cross that line, your personal life stays on that side, and this is business. Likewise with employees, I think there's boundaries, like you said, that you need to keep to make sure that that employee-boss line doesn't get blurred.
Right, very good. And from the HR end, I'm all about protecting your company. I want to make sure that you guys are in legal compliance. And let's say that I am a manager and I am friends with one of my workers, one of my direct reports, and on his Facebook page he has that he went to a church outing. And I don't like that particular church, and he knows that. And so when I write him up for attendance infractions, he's going to say, well, no, the reason that you wrote me up is because you found out that I just joined this church, or that because I dressed up as Hitler for Halloween, or whatever it is. So they could use that against you when you take adverse action against them in the workplace. So what we're saying is just don't do that. It's just a good practice not to participate in social media with your workers any longer. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, it's going to be a lonely job, just so you guys know. Next, Judy's level of professionalism has got to be a higher level than it was before. Before she was an employee, now she's a manager, now she's going to be on display. Now people are going to be looking at her. So the way that she acts, the way that she dresses, the way that she speaks, the emails that she writes to people, it's all going to be judged now. People are going to judge Judy. So you need to make sure that as a manager that you recognize, I better not do those things, I better not say those things because now I'm a manager and people are going to criticize me, they're going to scrutinize me. So please make sure that you take that into account. Professionalism has got to be there. Also, when you're outside of the company, you're representing the company now as managers, as owners. So whatever you do outside of the company is also going to reflect upon you inside of the company. So before, Judy could get sloppy drunk on the weekends and post her picture on Facebook, oh, here's me passed out after partying all night. You can't do that anymore. And you shouldn't do that anymore. As a manager, as an owner of your company, you've got to be professional, you've got to be credible, you've got to be supportive, you've got to be kind, you've got to do all those things that employees want to see. They don't want to see this as their supervisor. So please make sure that you refrain from doing those kinds of things and compromising your integrity as a manager and as a supervisor. So Judy, as the new manager, is she going to have favorites in the office? Yes, she's going to have favorites in the office. And that's okay. It's human nature to have favorites. Those favorites are going to be people who come to work every day, who do their job every day, who are very supportive of their coworkers, who are very kind to their coworkers, who volunteer to help out. All those people are going to be her favorites. But as much as possible now, she as a manager has got to be consistent in enforcing those policies fairly and consistently. So let me give you an example. Jake, one of her employees, is a super employee, great guy. Everybody loves Jake. But he's going through a really challenging time with his mum. His mum is unfortunately dying. And Jake has asked Judy, hey, I need to take my mum to the hospital twice a week, so I'm going to be late a couple of hours every week. Is that okay? And Judy says, absolutely. So she's accommodating Jake's horrible situation. Carol also comes to work late, at least a couple of times a week. But she comes to work late because sometimes she just can't get up. So Judy talks to Carol and says, hey, Carol, you know what? You just need to make sure that you come to work on time. These are the reasons why. And Carol continues to come to work late. So Judy finally says, hey, you know what, Carol? We need to have a serious conversation about this. She brings Carol in. She writes Carol up. What's Carol going to say? Adam, what's she going to say? What's Carol going to say?
I need you here.
No, Judy's the boss. Carol's the one who's getting written up.
Oh, she's going to point to her coworker.
Exactly. She's going to say, hey, wait a minute. Why are you writing me up? Write Jake up. He's always late. Now, Jake's a private guy. He doesn't want anyone to know about his mum. But that's what Carol's going to say. And Carol's going to say one more thing. Is it because I'm a woman? Is that why you're doing this? So you're discriminating against me now? So how does the company protect yourself against that? What do you do? Uma, what do you think Judy should do as a supervisor? Any ideas? Mike, what do you think?
I think you document everything.
Oh, very good. That's the key. Exactly. Very, very good. What Judy should do is document what Jake is going through, document the accommodations that she's making, and that you put that memo in Jake's file or Judy's file, whatever it is, that people can access it in case something happens. And that way, if Carol does want to pursue legal action down the road, Judy can say, here's what we're doing for Jake, and this is the reasons why. And it could be as simple as this. It doesn't have to be some long thing. This is Judy's message. I spoke with Jake today. He informed me that his mother is battling a terminal illness and provided me with a doctor's certification. The department manager and I are allowing Jake to come to work late twice a week so he can take his mum to set appointments at the hospital. This deviation with the attendance policy will continue until Jake no longer needs his accommodation. As simple as that. You can even put it on a post-it note. As long as you have documentation somewhere that says, this is the reason why we're doing this, and now you're covered as a company. All right, make sense? Okay, so here's a tip for Judy as well as a new manager. It's always good to, when you get to work in the morning, just walk around the office and tell everybody good morning. Judy, you're the new manager now. If you want to connect with your people, just walk around and say, hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's totally okay to do that. And at the end of the evening, what I would suggest too is walk around and tell everybody good night. You're building that connection. You're telling people that I'm leaving for the day in case you need anything. Make sure that you take those times, if you can, to build that connection. Okay, so Judy has to hire a new employee, right? When she was hired, they told her, hey, you know what, Judy, we want you to hire somebody else. How does she do that? The first thing that she has to do is to start off with a job description. Do you guys all know what a job description is? That's kind of a document that says, here's the job, here's all the things that you're going to be doing, here's the qualifications that you need to do this job, and here's the certifications, education, whatever that you need to be able to do that job. Job descriptions are really, really important. And if you need help creating those, let us know at BBSI, we can help you do that. But you need to create this kind of job description that has all these things on there, because you don't know what you're hiring for if you don't have all this stuff down. And a lot of times when you're hiring for jobs, the people that you're interviewing might say, can I see a job description? So make sure that you use the job description. Next is a job posting. When it comes to job postings, before in the past, you could post a job, like on Indeed or the newspaper, something like, first of all, when it comes to job postings, do I have to post a job? If I have a job opening in my company, do I legally have to post it so everybody can apply? Does anyone know? Ashley, what do you think? If I have a job posting, if I have an opening, do I have to put it out there so everybody can apply legally? Do I have to do that?
It's your government.
I say no.
You say yes? In most situations, you don't have to post it, but we would recommend that you do, just so that everybody has a fair shot at it. But in Utah, there's no law that says you've got to post every job. So you're totally fine there. But it's always good so that your other employees don't say, well, they just gave the job to Bill because they wanted Bill all along. No, you should post that job and let everybody apply. But you don't have to interview everybody. only interview those people who are qualified, if you like. Okay, so job posting. Here's what a typical job posting looks like. Account rep needed, must have 2 years of experience, bachelor's degree in marketing, salary is commensurate with experience, send resumes to Judy. Right? This is a typical job posting. And 5, maybe 10 years ago, that would have worked. Nowadays, this doesn't work. Nowadays, in this labor market, this doesn't fly for anybody. And you know why? Because it's all concentrated on the company. And nowadays, with this labor force, it all has to be about the employee. So if you want to sell your job, don't do this. What you should do is something like this. We invite you to join one of the fastest growing tech companies in the state. We're seeking a fun, dynamic, action-oriented individual who wants to reach their full potential, live their best life, while making a real difference in their community. We offer competitive pay, an excellent benefits package, and a happy and positive work environment where you will be empowered to showcase your talents, skills, creativity, and energy. Check out the description below for details on this exciting position. This is all about the candidate. This tells the candidate, we want you. We're going to make this great for you. This is all about the company. Do you guys see the difference? So when you're posting your jobs, if you want to get candidates, do this or try and sell it this way. Because we get a lot of companies, clients who say, Roy, I posted the job and I'm getting nothing. And it's because they look really bad. It's all about the company. You need to make it all about the employee. And it's just certain words that do that. So please make sure you do that. Sell the company. So Judy's posted her job. Right, she has a few candidates that she's going to interview for this job. What does she do now? Does she have to interview everybody who applies? We talked about that before. You don't have to interview everybody who applies. There are some companies or some employees who say, hey, you know what? I applied for that job and they didn't even interview me and that's illegal. No, you don't have to interview anybody. In fact, you can only interview one person if you want. What we recommend at BBSI is if you can interview people internally within your company who have applied, it's always kind of a good idea if you have the time and the resources to do that, because it shows them, number one, that you're considerate to their job application. Number two, you never know what you can find in that person. They may come to you and go, yeah, I know this, this, and this, and this, and you're going, well, I had no idea they had all these skills. So it might be good for you to interview those people that apply internally, but you don't have to. Okay, so Judy is going to conduct a high-level telephone interview with the top maybe 8 to 10 people. Right? Don't bring them in first. This is what we recommend. Don't bring them in. Do a high-level phone interview. And one of the main questions that you need to ask during the high-level phone interview, which is totally legal, is tell me about what kind of salary you're looking for. What's your salary range? Because what you don't want to do, guys, is go through the whole interview process and have 3 or 4 interviews down the road, and then you're ready to offer this person a position, and then they say, well, I want $20,000 a year more than what you guys are offering. And then you just wasted all your time. So at that very first telephone interview, make sure you ask them, what are your salary requirements? And if you can't meet them, that's okay. Go on to the next person. Does that make sense? Don't waste your time. Don't waste their time too. So, Judy does her high-level phone interview, and then she brings in the top, 5 to 8 candidates to talk to face-to-face. It's always best when you do those face-to-face interviews to have somebody else in the room at the same time. And we recommend that just for a couple of reasons. Number one is because you can get a second opinion, get a fresh set of eyes. Number two is it's always good for legal reasons. And once again, I'm all about protecting you guys legally. I remember once we had a gentleman who came to the interview. He was drunk. It was in Montana, and he might have been homeless, I don't know. But he was drunk. He smelled like alcohol. There was one recruiter who was interviewing him. He was clearly under the influence, slurring his words, couldn't even sit straight. And they said, hey, thanks very much, but we'll have a few more interviews to do and we'll be calling you to let you know. And so they let him go and he left the room. Later on, he filed a discrimination complaint with the EEOC, which costs nothing, by the way. So your employees can go ahead and file these complaints against you, and you really have no defense except to stick up for yourself. In this case, this was an American Indian man who filed a complaint saying, these guys discriminated against me because I'm American Indian, and they didn't give me that job because I'm an American Indian. And our response was, no, here's our recruiter notes. This person said he was under the influence of alcohol, and these are the reasons why we didn't hire him. Well, it went through the EEOC, and if we would have had another person there, we would have had a stronger case. But in that particular situation, I think it cost me around $1,500 for just to make it go away, which is what, in my former companies, that's what we used to do, is just pay people off so that we don't have to spend all this time and resources fighting this claim. Because sometimes these claims can take upwards of 2 years with information going back and forth and you spending your time. So in that particular case, $1,500, it was gone, but it would have been nice to have somebody else in the interview room to corroborate what this recruiter was seeing. It's always good to, when you do these interviews, as much as possible, ask the same questions of all the candidates, if you can. Rate them on a chart so that you have documentation that shows why you picked certain people. If you need one of these rating charts, BBSI can help you. Just reach out to one of the BBSI people. During the interview, there are certain questions that you should not ask. You guys know what these questions are. How old are you? What's your religion? You're planning to have children? Things like that. But what about if I'm hiring for a sales position and I need somebody who can drive to my different locations? So why is it bad to ask, do they have a car? Does anyone know? Isn't that like something that you need? You can't ask that. You can't ask if they have a car. I'll tell you why, because the EEOC, this federal body that kind of governs discrimination in the workplace, says there are certain groups, certain races that that could be like a financial question. And so if you're asking financial questions, that's not legal. So you might be able to glean from asking that kind of question that this person doesn't have the financial means, and so because of that he might fit in this particular race, and now you're discriminating against them because of their race. I know it's a far stretch, but that's what the government says. So don't ask that kind of question. But what can you ask? What can you ask if you want to address that? So what do you think? You're hiring a salesperson, you need to...
I mean, you can ask questions that are not those questions and get your answers.
But what about if I need to find out whether or not he has a car? How can I ask that question?
Are you capable of driving to our different locations?
Or,
How are you going to get there?
exactly, yes. Do you have transportation to get to these different locations? Do you have reliable transportation? That's okay to ask that. All right, make sense? Okay, so after another round of interviews, typically with higher level people, Judy is now ready to make an offer to a young lady named Barbara. Judy's excited because she's found the perfect person. Barbara is her new person. Judy now has to send Bob an offer letter. The offer letter, guys, should be short and simple. It does not have to be 5 pages. It can be simple as something like, like this. Right? Just has if you need help with offer letters, please feel free to call BBSI. We can draft or send you a template, but don't make it this long, arduous document. All right, so we send Bob the offer letter. What does Judy do? And Barbie's going to start in 2 weeks, right? So Judy's really excited. Bob's starting in 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, what does Judy do in the meantime while Bob is getting ready to come on board? Anyone know? What should Judy be doing?
Preparing any passwords or accounts that the new employee might need.
Very good.
All the credentials are ready.
Perfect, yes. Credentials, supplies, office space, make sure it looks clean, make sure it looks tidy. I would recommend too, if you can, to build that connection, to send Bob a nice card from the whole team that says, hey, welcome aboard, Bob, you're going to be great. We're really excited to have you on board. Thanks for choosing first best team, whatever it is. But send her a card. Some companies send like swag items. Some companies have sent me flowers before, which is really nice. But something that says, we really appreciate you choosing us, and we're going to have a great time over here, from the whole team. So send that card if you can. Okay, so Bob starts work, and by all accounts, she's a solid employee. Everybody loves Bob. But one day, one of Judy's other employees, Paul, comes to Judy and says, Judy, I want to file a sexual harassment complaint against Bob. And Judy's like, what happened? Bob just started. What's going on? And Paul says, I was in the break room with Bob, and Bob told me a joke about lesbians, and my sister is lesbian, and I didn't think the joke was funny, and now I'm filing a sexual harassment complaint against Bob. I'm really upset about this. So what does Judy do with this? Anyone have any ideas?
Go to HR.
Very good. First thing you have to do is call human resources. Yes, call human resources and let us kind of guide you through what needs to happen next. HR will speak with Paul and get his statement. When it comes to things like this, guys, make sure you get their statements in writing. Don't take your own interview notes. Make sure you say, hey, you know what, Paul, I'm sorry that this happened to you. Whether it's harassment or sexual harassment or something else, make sure you get it in writing first from them. Just say, hey, I'm sorry that this happened to you. What I need to do is get your statement in writing so there's no miscommunication. Give them a pen and a piece of paper or whatever, have them type it up, but something that comes directly from them, right? So don't take your own notes for it. And then we go and talk to Bob about what happens. When it comes to sexual harassment, though, there are two things that kind of dictate whether or not something is sexual harassment under the law, right? One is how severe is the behavior, and second is how pervasive or ongoing it is. So I had a situation in Pocatello once where a young man really liked this girl in the center, really liked her a lot. She was a cute little receptionist, and one day he saw her in the stairwell. She was leaving for the day, and he pulled his pants down and showed off his stuff. Severe, right? That's not only sexual harassment, that's assault. The police were called, he was arrested. That's severe. That's sexual harassment to the 10th degree. That's severe. But what about if I'm in the break room and I find Becky in there and I say, hey, Becky, do you want to go to the Bruce Springsteen concert tonight? And Becky goes, no, I'm sorry, but I'm busy. And the next day I say, hey, Becky, I have 2 tickets to the movies. Do you want to go to the movies with me? And she says, no. And the next day I say, hey, Becky, how about we just go and hang out and grab a drink? And all of a sudden, maybe you have this thing of pervasiveness or ongoing where it could be delve into the realm of pervasiveness or harassment. So it has to be severe and or pervasive in action to be sexual harassment. Okay, does that make sense? So Uma, in Bob's particular case, Bob told Paul a joke in the break room. Under the law, is that sexual harassment? Severity, pervasiveness. What do you think?
Pervasiveness.
No, because it was one time. Right? If she told jokes all the time in the break room, then it could be pervasive. Is it severe that she told her, that Bob told a lesbian joke? No, it was one time. Now, if she showed him on the phone 2 people are having sex or something, that might be severe. But to tell a lesbian joke in the break room one time isn't sexual harassment under the law. So that's not harassment, or sexual harassment under the law. It's unprofessional, it's inappropriate, it might be rude, it might be disrespectful, but it's not sexual harassment. So in this particular case, what does Judy do? How should she address this? Anyone have any ideas? A warning? Anyone else? Talking to her?
It's like, this isn't acceptable for a manager, and we don't do things that way.
Good. No, here's what I think you should do. Here's what BBSI would recommend. That Judy brings Bob into her office, and she just tells her, hey, you know what, I know that you're new here, but those kinds of jokes aren't appropriate and they're not acceptable in the workplace. So if you could, just refrain from making those kinds of jokes. And leave it at that. Bob doesn't have to sign anything. She doesn't have any kind of documentation in her employee personnel file. What Judy should do, though, is put something in Judy's own file about Bob that says, hey, I spoke with Bob today about telling an inappropriate joke to Paul in the break room. We explained company policy, she understood and has complied. So it's just something that Judy has that says, I addressed this issue. So if something does come up later on, Paul wants to file a harassment suit or something else, Judy can say, no, I addressed this on January the 14th. Or if Bob continues to make inappropriate jokes, then Judy can bring her in and go, hey, you know what, Bob, we talked about this last month. And Bob's going to go, I don't remember that. Yeah, on January the 14th, I talked to you about that. So she has some kind of historical document that shows we addressed it. All right, make sense? Okay, so Judy meets with Bob. She's addressed that issue. And once again, Bob doesn't need to sign anything. But during the talk with Bob, this happens a lot, guys, so you guys are going to have to deal with this. During the talk with Bob about sexual harassment, Bob says, well, you know what? Paul shouldn't be complaining about me because at work, he swears all the time. And that's all he does is swear in the workplace. He's effing this, effing that, effing this. And I think that's really offensive. So remember, Judy used to work with these guys, right? She was one of their colleagues. So Judy knows that Paul, she swears a lot. But now she's a manager. Now she's obligated to address it. So what does Judy have to do with this? What should Judy do? Anyone know?
Same thing she did before.
Oh, I love it. Yes, very good. Bring Paul in and go, hey, Paul, you know what? I'm not saying that you're doing this. I'm not saying that you're not doing this. But in the workplace, what I'm telling you is you can't be doing this kind of stuff. And make sure that you put something in the notes in Bob's and Judy's file that says, hey, I spoke with Paul today about using profanity in the workplace. We explained company policy. He understood and has committed to complying with this policy going forward. And that way, if Paul continues to do this, Judy can pull him in and go, Paul, we talked about this last month or on June the 17th. So we have a history of it. We have evidence that we addressed it.
Can you ask them to sign that form? Or that
You can. I don't think you need to. As long as you have this documentation, you're good. But yeah, if you want to, you can. Okay, so, welcome to the wonderful world of management, Judy. It only gets more complicated from here. So now, Mark, one of her other employees, has been acting a little differently in the office today. He is slurring his words, stumbling a little bit. Judy just found him sleeping in the break room. She pulls him into her office and she notices a strong smell of alcohol on Mark. So what does Judy do now? Ashley, what does she do?
If it's in the policy, she could ask him to do an alcohol test.
Get a little bit premature. What I would recommend is, as a manager, call human resources. Call your HR people and kind of get guidance on what they need, what she should do next. In most cases, Ashley, we would say, hey, bring in somebody else to sit with you and with Mark and just to corroborate that you're seeing what this other person is seeing as well. So kind of get a witness. And sometimes it's good too, we have checklists at BBSI. Most companies do that say, he's doing this, and this, and this is the reasons why we think that he might be under the influence of something. Some companies too have situations where they could go and test him. In this particular case, if it was a one-time thing, I don't think that I would recommend that as a manager, but what I would say is let's send Mark home, not have him drive, Uber, taxi, something to where he can get home safe, and then you could address it in the morning, maybe by saying, hey, tell me what happened last night. You were under the influence of something. And maybe you put him on a final warning, let him know that that's unacceptable, and then you go from there. But you don't have to make things a bigger deal than they need to be. And in this particular case, if it was a one-time thing, I don't think you need to have him tested. Just kind of talk to him and find out what he's doing and what the company policy is with regards to impairment in the office, and leave it at that. So, 2 months later, while leaning over in her chair, Bob, remember the new employee Bob, she falls down, hits her elbow on the ground. Judy comes to her aid. What does Judy do now? Bob just fell down, elbow is hurt. What should Judy do?
Send her to the clinic.
Yeah, very good. Let's take care of Bob first. Some employees say, well, should I call HR? No. Call an ambulance if you need to, call the clinic, but let's take care of Bob first. And then afterwards, you might have to complete first report of injury form so that we can submit that to workers' compensation, things like that. But make sure we take care of the person first. At BBSI, we also have a risk manager that you can call, and they kind of take care of the claims process for you. So it's really cool. But if you don't have that person, then you're going to need to take care of that. So as Judy continues her new role as a manager, she feels like there's some distance between her and the team, and she knew that she was going to get that. So what can she do to kind of reduce that distance and eliminate some of that tension? One way that she can do that, guys, is to stop with the emails and stop with the text messages and communicate in person. If you can, walk over to their cubicle and talk to them in person, and then while you're there, visit with other employees as well. But what you're trying to do is make that connection. As much as possible, I try to not to do the whole email thing and the texting thing, if you can help it. Walk over there and talk to them. It makes such a big difference. Okay, so make sure that Judy does that if she can. Judy's colleague comes to her for advice. Judy's colleague's name is Carol. Carol is not the same Carol who was one of her subordinates. Carol has 5 employees in her department. Carol has just found out that one of her managers is dating one of his employees, which is against company policy. They can't have that kind of direct report relationship where they're dating each other. No kind of romance that way. So what does Judy tell Carol to do? Adam, what do you think? Put them in a different department, maybe?
I don't know.
You don't know? It's kind of a sticky situation. What I would do first as a manager is call human resources once again and say, hey, this is what's going on. What do I do? In that particular case, you might have to move them to a different department, maybe you shift shifts, maybe you shift responsibilities to another person, but you can't have them directly reporting to somebody they're in a romantic relationship with. Why is that? Mike, what do you think? Why shouldn't they have that direct report relationship with your girlfriend?
Show favoritism.
Exactly. It's all about favoritism. And you know what? Even if it's not about favoritism, your other employees are going to think it's favoritism. That perception is there. So make sure, people, that you don't kind of allow that kind of relationship in your workplaces. All right. So remember Judy's conversation with Paul about his profanity? We had that conversation. We documented it. Well, apparently that didn't sit very well with Paul. And he kind of, in his mind, thought, I bet Bob's the one who ratted me out. And Paul's mad about that. And this happens in your workplaces. So Paul wants revenge because he thinks Bob ratted me out, saying that I swear all the time. I'm going to get back at her. So what he does is he's posted 2 notes on Bob's cubicle with the word snitch on a cubicle. And he has also badmouthed Bob to the members of the team, saying that she's a snitch and you guys don't want to trust her. And he frequently refers to Bob's emails for assistance with a reference to the movie Snitch. So he tries to work in that snitch in the email somewhere. So Bob is really emotional as she comes to Judy and says, Judy, I need help. This is what Paul is doing to me. So what does Judy do now? She's a first-time manager. How does she deal with this? Caitlin, what should she do? Very good. Call human resources. Call your HR people and say, hey, this is what's going on. What do we do? So in this particular case, before we jump to conclusions, HR advises Judy to get Paul's side of the story. It's okay to show Paul the emails that he's been sending as evidence, get his side of the story, and then Judy has to administer disciplinary action. But she's never administered disciplinary action before. How does she do that? Well, all disciplinary action should be done with a very strong sense of respect, consideration, and professionalism for that employee, even when it comes down to terminations. I had a situation once in my former companies, 3 or 4 companies ago, where we had a manager. His name was Dave. Super nice guy. Dave, everybody loved Dave. He was the operations manager in charge of a bunch of people. And he's locking up the call center one day here in Salt Lake. And he's locking the door. It's a whole bunch of glass doors and windows and everything else. And he hears, that's him behind him. So it's like the building, and then there's a walkway where people can drive their cars, and there's a parking lot. And over there in the parking lot, he looks over there, and there's a young lady and a guy. And the guy pulls out a gun and starts shooting at Dave. So Dave takes off running, and while he's running, this guy is shooting the windows along the way, and then the car speeds off and runs away. Call the police, FBI, goes to court, everything. It was crazy. So what happened was Dave had fired that young lady that day. And she went home and told her boyfriend, and her boyfriend came back to the company and tried to kill Dave. So just remember that when it comes to disciplinary action, terminations, whatever, please make sure that you do that with a strong sense of respect, consideration, professionalism. Make sure that you lead that person with a strong sense of dignity. Don't do it with any kind of emotion, because it can get really, really hairy, especially for you. Okay? So Judy talks to Paul about his behavior, and he admits to doing the retaliatory behavior. He admits that he was wrong. He admits that it was revenge. So Judy addresses him, and sometimes it's good, guys, when you're doing a disciplinary action, to role play with another person, maybe a colleague or somebody, HR, to say, hey, here's what I'd like to say, what do you think? Just to make sure that it's coming across the right way. So it's good to role play, which Judy does. And Judy meets with Paul, and she puts him on a final warning and says, Paul, this kind of stuff with Bob can't go on again. If it happens again, if we see that word snitch again, you're gone. And Paul is angry, and he's very loud, and he's very profane with Judy. And Judy's in this room with him by herself, and Paul is just going off. So what does Judy do? Well, the first thing she needs to do is to get him out of the building. whatever she needs to do. So it's okay to say, to calm the situation down, to say something like, hey, Paul, you know what? I understand that you're very upset. And this is a really uncomfortable conversation for me as well. How about we do this? Why don't you go home, simmer down, I'll do the same. We'll meet tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and we'll talk about how we can proceed from here. But get him away from the building. That's the number one thing, if you're by yourself especially. And then you can talk about how you're going to proceed from there. In this particular case, with Paul, Judy talks to HR, she talks to her manager, and they figure out, hey, you know what? Paul's done. We're just going to have to terminate him. So how does Judy do that? Remember, she does it with a strong sense of professionalism, respect, and consideration. She should, as much as possible, when you're doing terminations, if you can, do them with somebody else in the room. And that shouldn't be Paul's peer. Hopefully it should be like a supervisor, even if it's a supervisor of another department, but just don't be alone when you're doing terminations. Number one, because of safety reasons, but number two, it could also be a situation where you're protecting the company. Once again, I'm all about legal compliance, and this person can say things like, well, the reason that they terminated me was because I'm pregnant, or because I'm black, or because I'm this, or because I'm that, and all of a sudden you need to have a witness that says, no, we terminated you because of these things, and I didn't even mention your pregnancy. So please make sure, as much as possible, that you have somebody in the room with you as a witness. Next, can you, or is it legal to terminate an employee over the phone? What do you guys think?
Yeah.
No? Uma says you can over the phone. Anyone else think differently? Is it legal? Can I do that?
Maybe it has to be in writing.
In writing? Anyone else? I didn't even give you guys the pens. Everybody's just going to get a pen. When it comes to terminations, it's totally legal to fire them over the phone. You can absolutely do that, especially if you think that your safety or the company's safety might be in jeopardy. So it's okay to pick up the phone and go, hey, you know what, Mike, I'm really sorry. Things aren't working out. What we're going to do is make today your last day, and your paycheck's going to be ready at this time. Thanks for your service at the company. We wish you all the best. And leave it at that. But totally fine to terminate them over the phone. We recommend at BBSI that if possible, do it in person with somebody else, just so you have that respect for the individual. But if you feel like you need to do it over the phone, do it over the phone. Just make sure that you get back the company equipment. Make sure that you have the check ready within how many hours? In 24 in Utah. Really quick, I'm going to tell you a quick tip that happened once when I was dealing with a court case here in Utah. If you don't pay your employees within 24 hours by state law, you get assessed as a company 100% penalty. So if I owe Ashley $100 on her final paycheck and I don't pay it within 24 hours, by law it says that every day that passes, I'm supposed to get or pay you an extra $100. Did you guys know that? It's 100% penalty. So one employee took us to court and said, you guys didn't pay me for 3 days, and so you owed me $700. Now you owe me $2,100. And now I'm going to take you to court, and they did. What most people don't know, what a lot of HR people don't know, is that in order to get those penalties from the company, that employee has got to submit that request in writing. If he doesn't have it in writing by law, no penalties can be assessed. So I went to court and I said, hey judge, here's the law. This law says that in order to assess penalties, it's got to be in writing. The judge looked at the employee and said, did you submit anything in writing? And the employee said, no. And the judge says, okay, we're done. Glenda.
Question on that. For those penalties, when she gave the call, it should have been in writing, saying like, sorry. It's been 3 days since I was let go, laid off, whatever. Now, this is what you owe me instead of the phone call? Am I understanding that correctly?
When you fire somebody, you don't have to have anything in writing here in Utah. Mm-hmm. So if Paul says, hey, I want to get my penalties for this, I don't believe that you guys are going to pay me within 24 hours, then yes, he's got to send something in writing, email something that says, I formally request my final paycheck.
Is that the same for employees that voluntarily leave?
No.
Is
No.
it the first day that you get terminated that you request that?
Yes, the day that you get terminated, that's when you should request that demand. Or else afterwards too. You can do the demand afterwards, but it can't be like a week afterwards. It needs to be reasonable, the day after or something that says, I request my final paycheck. And the law says you've got to have it within 24 hours, but the law's not going to give you assess any penalties to the company unless unless the employee submits something in writing. It's a very little known thing. Anyway, when it comes to unemployment, Paul just got fired. He's really upset about that. He asked Judy about unemployment. Judy, am I going to be able to get unemployment? Can I apply for unemployment? And the truth is, when it comes to unemployment, guys, I don't know if you guys know about how unemployment works. I'm just going to give you a quick tutorial. When it comes to unemployment, you as a company don't have any kind of control over whether or not that person gets unemployment. So a lot of times employees think they're not going to give me unemployment. Well, I don't have any jurisdiction over that as a company, because you don't. Neither does the employee. So what happens is, as the employee, Paul is going to go to the unemployment office and he's going to say, hey, unemployment people, I want to apply for unemployment benefits. And they're going to say, how did you leave that company, Paul? And Paul will say, this is how I left. And the unemployment people says, thanks for the documentation. Now we're going to go to the employer. And they come to the employer, you, the company, you, and Judy, and say, hey, Judy, how did Paul leave the company? And then Judy gives her side of the story. And the unemployment office looks at Paul's side, and they look at Judy's side, and they say, okay, based upon these stories, we're going to award benefits. You guys don't have the control. The employee doesn't have the control. It's all about the unemployment office. And sometimes it's very subjective. I talked to these guys once in a seminar, and they said, it kind of depends upon whether or not we're having a bad day. And I'm like, are you serious? But that's how the unemployment works. Caitlin, please.
Just having dealt with one of these recently, it has to be considered a demonstrated pattern. That's one of the big things with, especially if you're terminating someone for like attendance. So we recently lost an unemployment case for someone who was terminated for attendance. The company did have documentation. They had multiple write-ups for this person, but the write-ups that they submitted were about a year old. So it was like a year to 6 months old, and then they had one more occurrence of an attendance issue, 3 to 6 months later from the last write-up. And so we lost the unemployment case because we actually weren't, documenting attendance consistently. So just keep that in mind as well when you are enforcing your policies. And if you do come to a situation where you are terminating someone, that it's consistent, and that you have some kind of structure around, what is considered a demonstrated pattern versus something that's happening maybe more intermittently.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Documentation is very important. So Judy's been through a lot, guys. She's still trying to figure out her management style. She's brand new. So here are some tips that I'd like to give Judy. A shepherd and a sheep herder are often confused with doing the same thing. But the truth is they are very different. A sheep herder stands behind the sheep with a sharp stick, and he pokes them and he hits them in an attempt to keep them within his control. A shepherd, on the other hand, stands like a leader in front of his flock, and the sheep follow him. This is how we want Judy to be. We want Judy to be like the leader, set the example, do the right things, say the right things, and let the people follow her example. If Judy needs to give any kind of directive or have somebody perform a task, she should never balk at orders or demands. Instead, she should employ one little word that so many people don't use, but you should ask. And what I say is, when you ask, throw a please in there, and it really makes a big difference. So Caitlin, turn off the lights. Or I can say, hey Caitlin, would you mind turning off the lights, please? See the difference? It's so considerate, professional, respectful to that person. So please make sure you ask people and then throw a please in there, and you wouldn't believe how many of our clients don't do this. So please make sure you do. As a manager, I can guarantee it that you guys somewhere along the way are going to have to apologize to an employee, even when you did nothing wrong. It's going to happen. I worked at a company once, big company. They had 3,000 employees. I had a team of about 20 people, and every morning I would walk around like I taught you guys today and just kind of say, hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you guys doing? Good morning. And one lady, middle-aged woman, who was kind of a weird lady anyway, she came to me one day and said, hey, I really don't like it that you say good morning to me in the morning. And I go, why? And she said, because it just seems disingenuous you walking around telling everybody good morning. I'd rather you not say good morning to me. So I said, hey, you know what, Vicky, I'm really sorry, and I didn't mean to offend you. And yes, from now on, I won't say good morning to you. But I'm apologizing for something that's so stupid. But that's, as a manager, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you're going to have to apologize. So I'm going to teach you guys how to apologize today. Not many people know this. This is really important. This could change your life, especially with your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whomever. So today I'm going to teach you how to apologize because not many people know how to apologize. What they do is they apologize and then they always say something like, I'm sorry, but if you would have done this, or I'm sorry, but this happened. No. Here's how you apologize. You're going to say 9 very simple words. And first of all, when it comes to the workplace, different people, different backgrounds, different life experiences like Vicky, so that's why you have to apologize. But here's how you're going to apologize. I'm sorry. I'll try to be better next time. I'm sorry, I'll try to be better next time. That's what you're going to say next time you need to apologize. So when your wife says, dude, why'd you do that? Your response is going to be, I'm sorry, I'll try to be better next time. And leave it at that. Cut it off, walk away, don't say anything else. No buts, no anything else. I promise you, your spouse is going to look at you and go, what the crap? What was that? It happened to, I taught this class a few months ago, and one of the people came back to me afterwards and said, I tried that on my wife, and she looked at me like, who are you? So do it. Next time you need to apologize in the workplace, to your spouse, to your kids, you're going to say, I'm sorry, I'll try to be better next time, and leave it at that. In fact, we're all going to say it right now. After 3, I'm going to have you guys all say it. I'm sorry, I'll try to be better next time. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, I'll try to be better next time. There you go. Now you guys know how to apologize. Right? Very important. And try this at work, at home especially, because I promise you it'll work. Judy, now that she's a manager too, she's going to be responsible to, or she's going to be privy to certain information about employees, about their health conditions, about their family situations. She's got to keep that stuff confidential. It's really, really important that she don't talk to anybody else about it. And sometimes as managers, as owners, we're kind of tempted because it's juicy stuff. It's funny stuff. Caitlin was touching Mike's knee, and Mike was really upset about it. And Mike came to me, and isn't that funny that Mike's upset about that? It's like, don't talk about that stuff. It's confidential. You don't need to hear about that. Okay, next. In addition to spreading gossip, spreading gossip is disruptive, it's counterproductive. If Judy sees that in the workplace, before she was an employee, now she's a manager, she's obligated to stop that. And it could be as simple as saying, hey, you know what, Uma, that's not appropriate to be talking about that in the workplace. I'm going to have to ask you to stop. And leave it at that, right? But just make sure that you cut it out. You're going to gain respect, you're going to gain credibility when you put a stop to this kind of stuff in the workplace. Okay. Tolerance of others will not only make you a better employee, it will make you a better human being. Just remember, guys, that in the workplace, especially nowadays, this stuff is really crazy, out of control. Diversity is a big thing. So all employees have got to be treated the same regardless of their color, age, religion, ethnic background, sexual orientation, or disability. And I say this because it's the right thing to do, but also, once again, because of legal compliance, I want to protect you guys in your company. I had one guy once, this is kind of a different story, but it's about diversity as well. There was a black guy in our call center, and he stole a computer, and we had cameras everywhere. On the way out, he smiled at the camera carrying this computer. So we have him on tape. It's very clear that it's him. We fired him. He filed a EEOC racial discrimination case against us saying, they fired me because I'm black. And we said, no, we have you on camera. And the EEOC said, Roy, it's going to be a case going back and forth. It's going to take about a year, 18 months. What do you want to do to make it go away? So I said, what does he want? And they said, he wants $10,000 to drop the case. And we could go through it back and forth, but it's going to take me 2 years of dealing with this stuff. And when the EEOC gets involved, they don't just look at this employee, they go through every employee. They go through all your different cases. How many cases of sexual harassment, how many cases of racial discrimination did you guys have? We want to see all those files, everything. It's this horrible investigation. So I said, I'll give him $1,000 to go away. So he not only walked away with my computer, he walked away with $1,000 as well. So make sure that when it comes to diversity, that you're ultra sensitive to that and that you're very supportive. Also, when it comes to employees speaking another language in the workplace, they're entitled to do that as long as it's not in a work-related situation. So if you hear people, sometimes our clients may say, hey, you know what, here at work you need to talk English. You can't do that unless it's work-related. If they're in the break room, if they're by the truck, if they're talking during lunch, they can talk whatever language that they wish. Okay, make sense? All right, so one day Bob stops by Judy's office. Bob, new employee, she informs Judy that she has bad knees and that she needs to elevate her legs for long periods of time So Bob is requesting an ADA accommodation. ADA is Americans with Disabilities. That's the law that governs disabilities in the workplace. So Bob is saying, hey, you know what, Judy, I appreciate the job and everything, but I've got to have one day off work to elevate my legs. So what does Judy do now? Tad, what does Judy do? Call human resources, right. Yes, Judy's going to pick up the phone and go, hey guys, Bob wants a day off every week to raise her legs. What do I do? So HR is going to tell Bob that she needs to complete an ADA request for accommodation, which basically says, here's what I need from you guys in the workplace. And then she needs to submit that with a note from her doctor that says, this is what Bob has. She needs to be off work. That note from the doctor needs to be specific. So Bob provides this note from the doctor that says, hey, Bob has bad knees. She needs to be off work one day a week. Does Judy have to allow her to work from home one day a week under the law? What do you guys think? Ashley, what do you think? Does Judy have to allow that? Would you? Would you be mad if that was your employee? I'd be kind of upset, but the law says that just because the doctor says it doesn't mean that you have to do it. And make sure that you guys know that the doctor's stuff, the doctor's direction is not law, and a lot of times the lawyer's direction is not law. So it's okay to question that stuff. The ADA says you've got to accommodate employees in the workplace. The ADA does not say, I need to accommodate employees outside the workplace. That's a different law called FMLA, which says employees can take time off work. ADA is all about accommodating employees at work. So the ADA does not say, I need to take time off work, we need to accommodate that. No. But what can we do for Bob in the workplace? What could we do? Anyone know? Maybe elevate her legs? Maybe buy her an ottoman so she can put her legs up, something like that, but you don't have to give her time off work. So make sure you call HR and we can let you know, hey, these are the options. Okay, Judy's a new manager. She's experienced a lot of obstacles and challenges. We've seen that already. When she has issues, when she has stress, when she has concerns, when things are overwhelming, it's okay for Judy to go to her manager. It's okay for Judy to go to her supervisor or the department head or even human resources for help. It's not okay for Judy to go to her direct reports or her subordinates and say, this company really sucks, they're doing me wrong, I need a raise. That's not okay. Judy needs to go to the people that can help her, like HR, like her managers, but not her direct reports, to go and talk to them. And if you guys encounter that in the workplace, it's okay to say, hey Judy, you can't be talking to so-and-so. They're your subordinates. If you need help, come and talk to us. Does that make sense? Okay, when it comes to stress, guys, now that Judy's a manager, she's going to have stress, she's going to have challenges, she's going to have obstacles, but she needs to remember that while she's at work, she's got to be supportive, she's got to be positive, she's got to be productive, she's got to be all those things that people want to see. She can't be the person that goes to her office and starts crying all day because she's going through a horrible situation. So she's got to have this mask of a manager is what I call it. While you're at work, you've got to put that mask on and be that person that people need to see at work, not the person who's falling apart, who's dying inside. I remember once I was working, this was a while back, and I was the vice president of human resources. I was working in the accounting department where Brad wouldn't let anybody go home before him. And one lady one day, it was during the middle of the day, and she's at the copier, and she grabs some papers up like this, and she says, who's printing stuff out about cancer? Really loud, and I'm thinking, oh crap, did I leave that on the machine? And so talk starts going around the office, and my manager calls me in, the CFO, and says, why wouldn't you tell me what's going on? And I said, well, it's kind of a horrible situation. My wife has cancer. We can't have kids of our own. It's really killing me inside. And he said, well, what, Roy, I had no idea that this was going on. And I said, well, Brad, I'm the vice president of human resources at the company. I can't be like falling apart or showing my employees that I'm falling apart, even though I was inside. So as a manager, sometimes you're going through horrible situations, and we get that, and horrible divorces or horrible kids' illnesses and things like that, but you've got to make sure that while she's at work, Judy maintains that level of professionalism. Does that make sense? All right. Doesn't mean that she can't go in her office and take a few minutes and kind of decompress and breathe and cry or whatever, but while she's in front of her employees, she's got to be that manager, that professional. Okay, there are going to be times when Judy needs to go sprinting to her employees. I mean sprinting to her employees. The first time that she goes sprinting to her employees is when they're dealing with a very bad personal situation. They need Judy's support. That's when she needs to be there for them, and that kind of support is priceless. So if they're going through a horrible divorce or a horrible child sickness or something like that, Judy as a manager needs to go to them and go, what can I do? I'm so sorry that this is happening to you. We're here to support you. What do you need from me? That kind of stuff makes a big difference. So please, as a manager, Judy, make sure that you do those things. The second time that you go sprinting to your employees, Judy, is when they make a big mistake at work. I mean a big mistake. And that's not the time to be beaten up. It's not the time for them to be scrutinized or to be chastised. That's a time when they need you to say, this happened, I get it, let's fix it now together, and then we can talk about what happened. But fix it with them. 2 times when you go sprinting, Judy, number 1 is when they're going through a bad situation at home. Number 2 is when they make a big mistake at work. All right? Okay. Before we close, I want to make sure that we mention one thing before we close, and that is that's something that some of you may not agree with, and that's okay. This is just Roy's personal opinion based on 25 years of human resources experience. Not all employees are going to be good for Judy. Not all employees are going to have her back. And it doesn't mean that she's a bad manager. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means for whatever reason they don't click. And so, for example, sometimes when you go to school and you take a class and you click with that teacher and you get great grades and you love the class, and you take another class with another teacher, and then you just bomb. It doesn't mean that the teacher is bad or that you're bad. It just means that somewhere along the way you just don't click. If you have, Judy, employees who don't follow you, who don't support you, who don't trust you, who don't do what they're supposed to do, my opinion as from BBSI would be to support that employee as much as possible, to do all the right things that you can do to make sure that they know you have their back. If they still don't follow you, get rid of them. And don't hesitate. And right now, I'm giving you guys permission as employees, as managers. I wish somebody would have done that to me 20 years ago when I was dealing with this stuff. Get rid of those people. Let them find something somewhere else that will make them happy. You don't have to do it in a bad way. It can be simple as saying something like, hey, you know what, Adam, I know that you're not happy here, and I can sense that with you. And so tell me what's going on, and what can I do to make things better? And if it's finding something for you outside of the department, within the company, great. If that's not it, then let's find something for you outside the organization. But you deserve to be happy. And I want to see all of our employees happy, and let's find something else. And maybe that's where we build an exit strategy for you, Adam, where we go 2 weeks, let's find you something else. After 2 weeks, then you can find something on your own. But let's have you find something else. So be kind, be respectful, be supportive. Doesn't mean you have to be mean to people, but get rid of those people who don't follow you, who don't buy into what you're selling. And I'm not trying to be rude about that. I just think it will save you as managers, save Judy a ton of time if she says, hey, you know what? I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be kind. I'm trying to give them every benefit of the doubt. Don't go that route. Don't think you can change people, because you can't. And I wish somebody would have told me that a long time ago. Okay, those are my tips. You know, when I was a young man, I was in the military for 6 years, and people asked me, particularly my kids, how was that? What was that like? And I tell them it was probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done, but it's also probably the most hardest thing that I've ever done. Managing employees, Judy, is kind of the same way. Managing employees can be so rewarding at times, but at other times it's so hard and so frustrating and so exciting and so all of that other stuff. So just know that it can be a ride. It's stressful, it's wonderful, it's exciting, but the most important thing that Judy needs to remember is that when she, when she is managing employees, she's impacting somebody's life. You know, that's what you as managers, as owners, that's what you guys get to do. You're turning people's lives upside down for the better. So please make sure that the legacy that you leave is a good one, where people can look back at you and go, man, that Mike was such a great boss, and I'm going to emulate those things because I love those things that he used to do. So make sure that you leave that legacy. I want to leave you guys with 3 tips really quickly, and these are kind of tips for life, but for managers as well. Number 1 tip is, these are Roy's tips for excellence. And you can disregard these if you want to, and you can throw them away, but I'm just going to share them with you anyway. Number 1 is be excellent in everything that you do, Judy. As a manager, no matter what you're doing, even if it's outside of work, just be good and excellent in whatever you're doing and make sure that you do it to the best that you can. When I was waiting tables years ago while I was in college, I thought I was a really good waiter. I tried to be gregarious and outgoing and great customer service. I can't tell you how many people offered me jobs. They're like, Roy, you're so good. We want to have you come work at our company. But back then I was in college too, so I didn't take them up on it. But when you do those kinds of things, people recognize you. We had a lady at our company. She wasn't at BBSI. She was a security guard in our building. And her name was Anne. She was very helpful, very customer service oriented. If you walked through the door and you had a bunch of bags, she would jump out of her chair and go help you. She would opening doors for people. Hey, how you doing? Hope you're having a great day. Anne was really good. And you know what? People in that building, when Anne wanted to move up, they snatched her up and said, Anne, you're working for us. It was really cool. We knew that was going to happen. Now we have a security guard. You walk in the building, nice person, but I'll say, hey, good morning. And he'll say, I'm here. And that's it. Doesn't recognize you for anything, doesn't say hi, doesn't help you out with the bags, doesn't open the doors for you, none of that stuff. And I'm thinking, boy, if you want to be a security guard for the rest of your life, you're probably going to be that because nobody's going to jump all over that. So be excellent in everything that you do, no matter what it is. And excellent means excellent in whatever you're touching, your finances, your car. If it's your car, make sure your car looks clean. If it's your kids, make sure that you treat your kids the best way that you can. Just be excellent in everything. It just makes you feel more proud of your character and who you are. The next, run your own race, Judy. Make sure that you don't worry about what everybody else is earning, the size of their office, what kind of great employees they have, how great they're looking their spouse is, any of that other stuff. If you want to drive yourself crazy, think about what everybody else has in the world versus what you have. Don't do that. Run your own race. Worry about what you're doing. Focus on yourself, please. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself mad. So sometimes, you look at other people and they go, crap, why did they get that promotion? I should have got that promotion. Don't do that. You'll drive yourself crazy. What you should do, what I used to do for myself was to maintain my peace, to say, you know what, Ashley got that promotion. That's great. Congratulations, Ashley. I hope that you and your family enjoy that big bonus and that big raise. And inside you go, crap. But outside, mentally, you're thinking, you know what, good for her. My turn is coming up next. And it will. If you put that out in the universe, it will. But make sure that you focus on yourself, not on everybody else in the workplace. Okay? And finally, this is one that's kind of weird, but it's for me. It's believe in miracles. There are 2 ways to live your life. According to Albert Einstein, 2 ways to live your life. You could live as if nothing is a miracle, or you can live as if everything is a miracle. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and all science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. So believe in miracles, because you know what? It's weird, but it happens. And I'll give you an example. I went to a seminar once downtown here in Salt Lake City. There's a guy by the name of Zig Ziglar. Have you guys heard of Zig Ziglar? Very, very prominent sales guru in the world. He's written all kinds of books, does all kinds of seminars. This was a big conference downtown. He was one of the keynote speakers. And he said something really interesting that I kind of taken with me ever since this happened. This was probably, 20-something years ago. He said, when it comes to goals, when it comes to things that you really want, you've got to put them in writing. So write them down. It kind of puts it out there in the universe that this is what I want. And it's like a pilot when he goes into a plane and he sits in the cockpit and he flips on all those buttons. When you put things in writing, it kind of puts things in motion to where it can happen. So make sure, this is Zig Ziglar talking, make sure when you guys go home today that you put your goals in writing and see what happens. And believe that they're going to happen. And I thought, what a bunch of crap. So I went home and I said, I'm going to prove Zig Ziglar wrong. And this was February conference, and I wrote down some stupid goals on a piece of paper, and I said, one of the goals was, before the end of this year, I want to be a dad. Carol couldn't have kids, we knew that. She had the whole cancer thing. But I said, that was going to be one of my goals. I'm going to be a dad before the end of the year. Stupid goal. And it was February. The next month, my wife Carol, was at a store and she saw this Caucasian lady walking with two little Asian babies in a stroller. And she was talking to the lady, and the lady says, yeah, I adopted my kids from an orphanage in Taiwan. And crazy, but 9 months later, we picked up our first boy from that same orphanage in Taiwan. And it was right before Thanksgiving. Before the end of the year, I was a dad. Weird. We had no ideas about adoption or anything else, but things like that happen. So I've been doing that. One of my goals was, before the end of the year, I want to write a book, published a book. One of my goals was, I want to go on a cruise. This was years ago. I said, I want to go on a cruise. I get motion sickness. I don't do boats or water or anything else. This year, my kids and I and Carol will go on our 10th cruise. So things happen. When you put things out there in the universe, I'm telling you, miracles are everywhere, and they do happen. So please make sure that you guys, if you have specific goals, and even if they're ridiculous goals, go home, write them down, put them in a drawer somewhere, and check out whether or not they happen, because it's weird, because not all of them will happen, but the ones that do, you go, the crap, there was like no way that should have happened, but it did. When I was looking for a job, I was looking for a specific job, and I put that out there as one of my goals, that I want something where I can just have a sense of peace and have some fun and be with wonderful people, and I found BBSI and Caitlin and Tad and all these wonderful people over there. So it's really weird how it happens, but it does. Okay, that's my 3 goals. And here's another picture of my family. Oh, this is on one of our cruises. But yeah, it happens. So believe in miracles. And once again, your legacy duty is going to be whatever you make it to be as a manager. So please make sure it's a good one. Make sure that your people look at you and go, that's how I want to be when I get into management. How you treat your employees today will be your legacy. So make it a good one.